The Supreme Court ruling that the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission be allowed to officially registered as a non-governmental organization continue to elicit outrageous reaction from both Kenyans, religious leaders, and politicians. In their judgment, the Supreme Court judges argued that it will be unconstitutional to limit the rights to associate through the denial of registration of an association purely on the basis of sexual orientation of the applicant, a ruling that has now received sharp criticism across divide. Now joining us in the conversation is Bishop Paul Mwangi, and also joining us live via Zoom is Reverend Adera Martin Godfrey, priest and theologian, and Alvin Mwangi, a human rights activist and sexual health reproductive expert. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time, but I want to read Article 36 and 36 and 27. The freedom of association, that is 36, it states that every person has the right of freedom of association, which includes the right to form, join, or participate in activities of an association of any kind. Then 27 goes further and explains the equality and freedom from discrimination. That is Article 27. Every person is equal before the law and has a right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law. Is the discussion really necessary? Let me begin with you, Alvin.
Yes. So I think we need to actually speak about this. We need to speak about this discussion as well as the issues, because we have seen quite a lot of the Kenyans who have the challenges when it comes to the access to the healthcare, the education, the jobs, and within the Constitution of Kenya and also within the Bill of Rights is that we all do have the rights and the freedoms within this country. So which means there is like no way that actually a law, a policy as well as a group actually may not be able to form and have, the activities that are there to be able to help their fellow Kenyans.
All right. Well, Bishop, the discussion itself to some might sound, unthinkable of, and sadly, not even a discussion to have at this particular time, but it is here with us and we have to face it, sadly. What is the stand of the church as far as, the issues to do with transgender and homosexuality is concerned?
The case is categorical because God forbids. If I read from my Bible in the book of Leviticus 18, verse 22, it is clear, verse 16, it says that one shall not do male or female. Or one shall not do the act of male to male as though it's male to female. And actually it says it is an abomination. I was also studying the Quran, the book of Quran, chapter 54, verse 14. It is clear that the Quran forbids and it says it is sin. What worries me is aftermath of that. Leviticus 20, verse 13, it says, to such who commit such abomination should be put to death. Similarly, if I compare from my Quran, I was reading other verses that says, actually, that person should be killed. I have gone further to do my findings, and I've seen the groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and others. They emphasize the reason why they go to an extent of killing. One would think that they are biased, but again, or terrorizing. But if quoted from the spiritual perspective, and it is God himself who said so, it sounds justified. If you go in the book of Genesis 19, verse 1 to 11, we have the whole story of why God removed or actually eliminated Sodom and Gomorrah. It was not stealing, it was not lying, it was not anything else. or murdering that made God decide to eliminate Sodom and Gomorrah. It was actually the sexual affairs that made God to think about that. So when you ask me about our ed, that is religious perspective, category we tell you that thing should not even be discussed, which God has forbidden. There is no law in the world, in any state, in the great organizations like United Nations and other organizations should discuss what God has said it is forbidden. He did not forbid to Kenyans or Africans, he forbade to all mankind.
All right. Well, Bishop, when we look at the whole issue, it's something that some will say it's a contentious one. But first, here we have two things to contest at. First is the Bill of Rights, that every Kenyan has a right to enjoy them. We have the freedom of association, freedom of movement, forming any kind of group, and that is the sole reason where the judgment of the Supreme Court was based on that. Then we have, the other hand, the moral aspect of it, the societal belief that we really have to uphold. When you see, is there a way that we can find a way that, in as much as we protest and protect our social belief and norms, at the same time we even protect the right of other Kenyans? Is there a way, without infringing, the rights of other Kenyans, in this case, the Lgbtq group, and of course the church that holds its societal in a very fabric manner?
Law is law. And the law can be there today, and tomorrow we call for referendum and do away with it.
All right.
So law has not come to change the mind of God. When you call me bishop or prophet or apostle or evangelist or pastor or reverend or father, any title that is church related, if you go to other faith-based organizations, like if you call somebody imam, sheikh, there you involve God, because that is not law. Right. It is grace. And once it is grace, we shall not say that the law of this country says. We shall actually go direct and say, what does God want mankind to be? And if God wants us to be like this, and tomorrow you sit as a group and they start forming your fundamental rights and this kind of law, and you obviously know that that law is against God. So me as a spiritual leader, I will disagree with you, because any law that beds God's commandments, I'm not in it, I'll not agree in it, I'll not follow it, I'll not actually be in it in any way. Whether you have passed this as a law in Kenya or in any land, because actually we know Kenya has signed an agreement to agree with the international law. Whether it is done there or here, and it has bed the commandments of God, that thing should be considered null and void.
All right.
Yeah.
Alvin,
Yes.
Is it a question of constitutionally right, or it's just ethic and moral right? Where do you balance all this?
Yeah, so the first thing that I think it's important for us to note is that within the country we are a secular nation, and we need to ensure that all the laws, as well as the policies and the programs, they have like that, like in mind. And then two, when it comes to the association, there is no problem or also the illegality with a group of people, no matter who you are. Two, you agree, you form the group, the association, and you speak about, the issues that you want to actually speak about. Three, within the country, the Constitution of Kenya is the supreme law within the country, which speaks about the rights as well as the freedoms. And within the Article 3.6, it speaks about that in case you are a person who is a Kenyan, you have all the rights that are part within the Constitution. So actually, when you look at the ruling was here to speak about the point of the association, and the ruling was not here actually to say, we say, yes to the same sex, relations, because within the court of appeal, actually, we still have the case, and of course we do not have the role to speak about that now, because the case is still in court.
Right.
But the ruling was specifically on a group that wants to form and associate. When you think about one, the teachers, I think they do have their own, the group, the association. When you think, also, when you think about the atheists, they do have their own, the groups. When you think about, I think, the police and such, they do have their own group. So, and within the organizations, they are not trying to steal,
all right,
commit any form of illegality.
All right. Even as we usher in, of course, agree into this particular conversation. But on that point, there is something that you mentioned, and here is the confusion. How, you form, the formation of it is illegal, but the practice of it is illegal. How do you deal with that? And that is the big question that many people are asking, and actually it's the bone of contention right now. How do you go with it?
Yes, so when you think about the organizations that actually they work for the LGBTQ plus people, they do not, or they're not here to respond to how the sexual, the acts and such things actually they need to happen. They are here to respond to one, the access to the healthcare. We have seen when it comes to both the access of one, the information, the services, and things like this become a problem. The access to the education, jobs, and then in case probably there is a case in court, we have also seen the groups, be there for this. And also the last thing is that the organizations do not work or engage with the minors.
All right.
They all work with the adults.
All right.
Yes.
Hold on to that point. Now, ushering in is, all right, well, we were to usher in someone, Reverend Adera Martin, but we'll engage him later on. Bishop.
Yes.
Well, the whole issue, when you look at the aspect of it, the formation of a body, of course, is not illegal, but the practice of the act itself is illegal. And this is where the church comes in, leaders, political leaders come in, and even Kenyans weigh in their view. And of course, from where you sit as a church, of course, as a man of God, how do you navigate through this uncharted and, of course, untroubled whole kind of discussion?
I want to correct my colleague. Kenya is not a secular nation.
All right.
You better call it faith-based nation, because 80% are Christians. We have Muslims taking their position. We have Hindus taking their positions. We have culturalists and traditionalists taking their positions. They are still in their faith. So the word secular should be removed totally. So that's a correction.
All right.
When we come to the right, the word right comes from the word righteousness. And when you mention the word righteousness, you mention God. So when we are addressing anything that is addressing human right, and you are not addressing God, which right are you talking about? No human has right if the right has not come from God. And God is the right judge who shall give the right justice to the mankind. So let's come now to what you are calling the one has been denied access to. I don't see in this country who is living, born or to be born, existing or not existing, who has been denied access to education. I don't know, because you are in this gender or the other one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lie.
All right.
And I call it a lie. Everybody has a right to education. Everybody has a right to association. And if you have been denied, you should be submitting a case in court claiming for your right. Everybody has right to feeding. Everybody has a right to information. And of course, in this time when we have social media open for all of us, no server is closed. Who is this person who is denied to any information? Go to the government offices even today. They have given us the e-citizen pages. If you want information from anywhere, you just click, sign up with your email or Gmail. Then from there you access the information. So when we talk of that, one want to be given the right to form NGO because of access of information, access of education, and you are a certain group of wrong people. Actually, as I was studying the Constitution of Kenya, lesbianism and the gayism is illegal. So whoever judge, let me finish this, whoever judge, and they call themselves the judge of Supreme Court, sat to pass on illegal thing in this country. If I was the head of that department, if I was the CJ or president or whoever takes the authority, by today they should not be working for this government because they have already passed something illegal. They claim to be the law advisors or the law observers, and they passed the illegal thing in this country. Why are they with us in that office?
All right, Bishop, you said about, the denial of rights. And actually, Article 36 and 27 talks about this, the rights, the right to form association. By denying them to form this association, it means you are denying them their rights that is enshrined in the Constitution. Don't you think that is double speech?
Let me say this. You form an organization, you have a right to form an organization, but not an organization that will divert us from our morals and beliefs.
All right. Well, Article 24 about the limitation of rights, of course. Let me read it for you. A right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights shall not be limited except, this is where the exception comes, the nature of the right of the fundamental of freedom and the importance of the purpose of the limitation. Of course, they talk, and there is talk in the street that they want to actually criminalize the entire, formation of the LGBTQ. And of course, that has really sparked some quite controversy among people. Do you think the rights or even the, limitation of such rights is unfair to those practicing it?
Yes, and to start by saying that I do not think that we have a human being or a person here in Kenya or in the world who can be seen as illegal. We were all born here, through the ways that we know. And to try and we take us back to what do we, when it comes to the country, actually follow the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, which is clear when it comes to, to the rights and the freedom. So when you try and you take away a right or a freedom of anyone because of who they are, then that is actually wrong. There is a lot of the research as well as the data that actually shows we have a lot of people who unfortunately have been sent out of their homes by their parents, and families, just because of who they say, they are. That, of course, is is actually wrong. When you go to a health, the facility, and you try to get, the information or a service or also the commodities, and then probably, like as part of the process, you're asked, these questions, and then
all right.
The healthcare, the provider will then see that, then right. you do not need the service. Then
right. We'll come to the services.
Yeah.
And of course, now joining us live from South Africa is Reverend Adera Martin Godfrey. Of course, good evening, Godfrey, and how are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing so good tonight.
Right. The issue that now we are discussing here is quite, a big one here. When you look at the contentious issues that are being raised, what is your view in this particular discussion?
Thank you so much. I will begin by saying our biggest problem in Kenya is that we have called LGBTQ issues an ideology, and we have not called them real lived realities of African people in Kenya. So we keep on talking about scriptures, talking about culture, about the constitution, but we're forgetting.
All right. Now we are talking about the rights and the bills. Well, there is some penal code that enshrine all this, and of course some of the limitations and everything in between. And before I dive you into that particular, the penal code and all thing, let me get Adera's view on this particular matter. And before we dive into anything else, well, in this case, do you think is it about the issues to do with the constitution, or is just the perception of the society and of course the morals that Kenyan society uphold?
Thank you so much. It's about people. It's about human beings. And so whether we want to talk about morality, it's fine. There are a lot of issues that we need to then discuss about morality. If you talk about the law of the land or the constitution, it's fine. There are a lot of issues that we need to engage in that matter. But invitation to people in this conversation is, let's talk about human beings who have real needs, who have real issues. And then when we come back to talk about people, then we will make the conversation life affirming. We will make the conversation, kind. We will make it emanating from a place of love, rather than, talking about text, talking about culture, talking about many things. So I invite people to a place where let's talk about people, real human beings, and not just text and things.
Well, before we were to dive you in, we were talking about how to balance between the aspect of the constitution, of course, which enshrine the Bill of Rights, and of course, you were trying to balance and see how the rule of law can be applied. At the same time, the society value that need to be, take into consideration, owing to the fact that Kenya is largely Christian population, and of course we have Muslim, and such act is unacceptable in our society.
Of course, I agree with you that you talk about value and our value systems, but you want to ask yourself, is Kenya really a Christian religious state? By law, Kenya is a secular state, and which means when we talk about law, or when we talk about human beings, the law provides that we begin the conversation from that point that Kenya is a secular state. Now, that which defines our values as a society is largely religion and culture. And the issues of LGBT have been called un-African, un-Kenyan, and un-Christian, un-Islamic, because then people are talking about values without talking about human beings. So how then do we balance this? One, I suggest that we need to come to a place where we agree that our values are not only, interfered with based on one act or one particular lifestyle. Let's talk about values then holistically. Let's talk about corruption, which also is probably about our values. Let's talk about, people dying hungry, and there's embezzlement of funds that are supposed to support them. So it's about a matter of values. Let's be holistic, then not focusing only on one particular thing.
All right. Even as we talk about the values, of course, there is some, sentiments that were made by various leaders. I'm talking about political leaders. Of course, President William Ruto, Deputy President William Ruto, and even Azimio leader Raila Odinga had to have their own view about these particular matters. I don't know if my director has that particular clip.
Every person has a right to marry a person of the opposite sex. Kubaliana, mradi tu ya kwamba wamekubaliana. Opposite sex ya kwamba jinsia tofauti. Hiyo ndio katiba.
Katiba article 45. Ukiwa na nafasi uende uangalie. Hiyo ndio ina protect au kukinga familia.
Ati wanaume waoe wanaume, ati wamama waoe wamama. Sasa hiyo ni mambo gani hiyo? Hiyo ni mambo gani? Sasa mimi nauliza, hata wale wanapitisha hiyo maneno na hatuna ubaya na kotini, Sasa mama akioa mama mwingine watabiana nini?
Mimi nataka niwaeleze ya kwamba katika taifa letu la Kenya tuko na mila, tuko na desturi, tunaheshimu katiba yetu, tunaheshimu madini zetu zote. Hatuwezi kwenda barabara ati ya wanawake kuoa wanawake wenzao, ati na wanaume kuoa wanaume wenzao.
Right, Bishop, even as we wind up this particular discussion, when you listen to the sentiment from political leaders, what does it ring on your mind?
That the religious dominates the law.
All right.
Because the bottom line is that what is our culture, what is our belief? And when I look at the way, like Gachagua is saying, what is this now? Me, I would say, if Joki Adimoiro, we have to be very specific. When we talk of Supreme, we are talking of institute. But who we are seated to approve that? We have the three of them, Wajala, Muiro, and Joki. Wajala is a man. I want Joki to marry Muiro. And if one of them becomes pregnant, we shall know lesbianism and gayism is working. If both of them marries. Raila Odinga should get a man and marry. And once he impregnates that man, particularly, I'll be very true to say that we are going to form those organizations. We cannot allow what God did not build. And here we are talking, I have to be very clean, we are talking a man who carries with him penis. Hold on. And a woman who carries with him vagina, Bishop, not anus against penis.
Bishop.
So if the two is not Bishop, working, then that formation of that kind of a family is not actually in place.
Bishop.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to correct you about the whole issue. Raila Odinga was not, advocating for the act. He was against it. So that one, I think that one was out of order.
I think I didn't get it clearly.
Yeah, that was out of order. I
start to be that corrected. But I wanted to emphasize on this, that we are agreeing, the society agrees that values and the morals and the belief and the faith and religion dominates the law.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, you have had the political leaders, of course. And in a society where the bigger majority, or rather the big percentage, actually are against such kind of, let's say practice, and they actually want to criminalize the act. And let me read you, even as we wind up, the Penal Code section 162, that, the unnatural offense, and it's actually applicable to sexual intercourse between men. And there is a remedy for that, of course, 14 years sentence for imprisonment. Yes. Then under the same penal code, that is 165, it says an attempt to commit unnatural, then meaning still it's liable to offense. And there is a section that, wrap it up, that prohibit the act of gross indecency. That is in this particular topic that you are talking about, the formation of that, the formation of the group itself for this, and according to Society of Kenya, is indecency. How do you deal with that, even as you advocate for the rights of, homosexuality, people with lesbian and gayism?
Yeah, so to start with one, I think when you listen at all the bites, it is extremely clear that they are all misinformed when it comes to what the case was about. The case was not trying to have same sex, the marriages. When you listen to both the DP, to the president, to the former PM, is that they are all speaking about what the case was not about, and to also remind the country that the court still said that the sections within the penal code still applies, and this case is within the Court of Appeal. So we still, unfortunately, cannot do, like anything. The big thing about this case was only around freedom of association. The case was totally not about, the same sex, the marriage between a man and a man, a woman, and, so that needs to be clear, because unfortunately, what that does is that like all that, it speaks into one, the violence, stigma, discrimination. We have seen a lot of the bullying, and trying to actually, name, the judges who actually, they said yes to this case. And if you think about it, we have been saying, the judiciary, it needs to be, like set and speak about these issues clearly. So when we have a case which unfortunately the country does not agree with, I think we also need to agree with it.
All right. Reverend Adera, do you think Supreme Court in their decision made a mistake in this one?
They did not make a mistake. But before I answer that, Evans, let me respond to what the bishop said briefly. The bishop is right in his sentiments as a bishop, but we are over-sexualizing human beings. That's why we are saying the only thing that LGBT guys do is sex. That's why he's saying let somebody make somebody pregnant. I think taking it there, we are losing the point here. As Alvin has said, the court only talked about association, not about marriage, not about people going to bed. So I think the discussion about sex is not the right discussion at this level, because then we are over-sexualizing human beings. Association is not a bad thing. What I'm saying as a person is the gay and the Kenya Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. It is necessary because then there are social issues. There are problems that are so peculiar to that community that needs to be addressed, that needs to be talked about. So let's take sex out of it. Let's take bedroom out of it and put faces to these things and begin to say every human beings need their social affairs being taken care of. And an association to do that is not a wrong thing. So the court was not wrong, because then it's a case that the High Court approved and said, yes, it's fine to have association 2015. 2019, the Court of Appeal said the same thing. And then on Friday, the court of the Apex Court said the same thing. So 3 courts cannot be wrong.
All right. Gentlemen, this one is, long and contentious. Of course, we'll keep on talking about it today, tomorrow, and it never ends. And of course, that's where we wrap it up. It has been a pleasure.
I could have responded to Reverend.
All right. Let me just give you a minute to, of course, of your closing remark, of course. Just a minute.
Let me put it clear to Reverend. When you talk of lesbian, that's sexuality. When you talk of gay, that's sexuality. Any other detail comes after. So when the thing that we are discussing here, it pertains sexuality. It is not about association. If it's about association, they could have formed themselves as women together with their own ideologies. We have youths working together on certain agendas. So when it comes to that, we are discussing lesbian and the gay, it's sexuality, and that is forbidden, and that one will never be accepted. And let me tell you, it is unfortunate you call yourself a reverend and you say that there is the goodness of association of lesbian and the gay, which you already know in the Bible and in Quran, which had earlier quoted, God forbids.
All right, fair enough, Bishop. And of course, your closing remark. 1 second, though. 1 minute. Let's point it up.
Is that one, we need to read what the ruling by the Supreme Court was actually about. The ruling was around freedom of association of any kind of group, and within the Constitution, actually, it does not discriminate. The court still spoke to the illegality when it comes to the penal code, which the court is still in case. I think we just need to ensure that we are not promoting, the stigma, discrimination, as well as the violence.
All right. Well, Reverend, it will be fair to give you, of course, 1 minute just in case you want to respond.
No, I'm not responding to anything. I'm saying my closing remarks.
All right.
Friends, we are not talking about a lot of things. What I'm asking is, let's de-weaponize religion, let's de-weaponize culture, let's de-weaponize our conversations and begin to talk about human issues. It's unfortunate that then I'm being labeled that it's unfortunate I'm a reverend because I'm saying let's de-weaponize things and talk about human beings. I am still inviting people to a place where let's have meaningful conversations without clobbering anybody using the Bible, using the Quran, using anything. Let's weaponize our conversation.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time. It's always a pleasure. And of course, this is where we close it up.